Hello everyone, this is Mam-Mary from the Starfish Reading Lab, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today we're going to be reading a really interesting book about monsters from around the world. But before we get into that, I would like to ask you all to do a few things for me. Please like and subscribe to this channel, as well as please share this video to your friends and family. And please comment. If you comment, then we might be able to do a few shout outs to you and your family. I hope you all enjoy the reading today. There are certain things that I have to do as a reader. I have to read the book to you. I have to explain certain parts of the book that might be difficult to understand. I also have to try my best and explain and read the virtue to my best ability so you all will be able to understand it and to be able to practice all of the virtues. I hope you're all having a wonderful day and that you stay home and you stay safe and you maintain social distancing guidelines. Thank you so much. So today we're going to be reading one of the Barefoot books, and it's about monsters. Are you scared of monsters? I am. So these are different stories from around the world. Okay everyone, let's get into our story. The name of the story is The Monster of the Whirlwind. That sounds sort of scary. Aboriginal Australian. So this is a story from Australia. If you stand quietly on the edge of a pond at evening time, you will often hear the croaking sound of frogs, humming their nighttime lullabies. But if a breeze should blow through the branches of the trees, or if a twig should suddenly snap, all you will hear is the plop of frightened frogs as they leap into the water. Once, way back, there was a time when frogs were bold and did not jump at every little sound. Are you a very frightened person, or do you jump at every sound? Or are you very bold and brave? And do you live anywhere where there are a lot of frogs? They lived in a large camp in the outback, on the edge of a slow-flowing river. There was plenty of food to eat during the daytime, and at night, the air was filled with songs of 1,000 frogs, croaking to the moon. Have you ever fell asleep or been in your room and heard frogs? But after a while, some of the younger frogs got tired of their mothers and their wives. "Why should we help the women with their chores?" they grumbled to each other. "We don't want to work all day in the hot sun. We would rather lie in the cool water and eat juicy flies." So they seem to be complaining about doing work. The muttering and the complaining grew until finally the women had enough. "Go on then," they said. "Set up your own camp. We can manage very well without you." So they just kicked them out. Joyfully, the male frogs leapt into the wide river and swam across to the opposite bank, where they made themselves a new home. They did not bother to do any work there at all, but dozed or caught flies in the water all day, climbing out to sing as the yellow moon rose in the sky. There was no one to scold them about the mess or about the noise that they made, and they could go to bed whenever they liked. Could you imagine if you could live all alone or with all of your friends and just make a bunch of noise and never do chores and just eat and sleep? Sometimes I'd wish we could do that, but then now I think about it, it's not really the best type of thing to do, because then none of the work would get done. But the racket they made each evening attracted something far more frightening than the sharp words of the women frogs. Across the desert, day by day, A column of spinning dust was drawing closer and closer to the camp. When you hear a column of spinning dust, what do you think of? I think of a whirlwind or a tornado. Have you ever been in one of those? It's like a giant storm where the wind, hot air and cold air come together, and it makes a huge, almost like a funnel, which can throw houses if it's big enough. That sounds pretty scary to me. Across the desert, day by day, a column of spinning dust was drawing closer and closer to the new camp. It whirled across the hard, dry land, picking up sharp stones and throwing them this way and that way. It danced around the dry bushes, plucking out their thorns and hurling them at the ground. It twirled and spun. It leaped and ran. Every day brought a little nearer to those lazy, loud-mouthed frogs. Could you imagine if a monster was coming every day closer to your house? Or a tornado? One evening, as the frogs gathered to sing their latest song, a strange feeling crept over them. Each one of them felt as if he were being watched. Each one of them felt as if a pair of cold, hungry eyes was staring at him from the darkness that surrounded their camp. The frogs hopped from foot to foot and looked nervously about. A couple of them tried to sing, but their croaks sounded small in the vast night. And then a voice spoke, a voice that howled like the rushing wind. It seemed to come from everywhere and from nowhere. It seems like something that's invisible. It whispered into the ear of each and every frog. "I'm hungry. Bring me food." Could you imagine if a voice said that to you? I'm pretty sure that we would all listen to that voice. Each frog gulped in terror. Each frog sprang to its feet and jumped into the dark river. Each frog returned with food. Some little fish, a few water beetles, leaf mold from the bottom of the river, and added to the growing pile at the center of the camp. No sooner had all the frogs sat down again than the food vanished, as if it had been snatched away by invisible hands. Could you imagine if a voice said, "Bring me food," and then all of the food just disappeared? "What can this monster be?" gurgled the frogs to each other in alarm. "And where is it hiding?" They wanted to know. "I am the whirlwind," howled the voice of the unseen creature, laughing a terrible laugh. Do you have a good evil laugh? I'm not going to share mine today, but you can say yours to the screen. None of the frogs dared to make a sound that night, for although it did not speak, they felt that invisible monster was still there, watching them. Even when the dawn came and the sun began its journey across the sky, they could not settle down. Have you ever had the feeling that you're being watched? It's not a nice feeling. As they fussed and fretted, the dreadful voice came again. "I will depart. I will return." So it said it's leaving for now, but it's coming back. The noise of the howling wind echoed around the camp, and the whirlwind spirit, the spirit of the whirlwind, was gone. It danced away in the shimmering air and out onto the plains, where it played its games with thorn bushes and the dust. So it disappeared, but it said it would come back. By the slow-flowing river, the frogs jumped at every sound. They hopped quickly away from flickering shadows. Their knees rattled together whenever the leaves rustled or branches creaked. They listened to the noise of the running water, and their heart beat faster whenever its notes changed. All day, they waited for the invisible monster of the whirlwind to return. Have you ever been afraid of a shadow, or been startled by a small noise, or even running water? It sounds pretty silly. These frogs are pretty silly. At last, the sun fell beyond the horizon, far away on the plains. The whirlwind spirit twirled and spun, leaped and ran, and every minute brought a little nearer to the frogs' camp, howling with all its might. The whirlwind spirit roared up to the river again. Above the noise of the rushing wind, again the frogs heard a voice. It seemed to come from everywhere and from nowhere. It whispered right into the ear of each and every frog. So it seems to be back. Listen now, frogs. I am the whirlwind. I am in the whirlwind, and my name is... What do you think its name is? But not a single frog dared to listen to the monster's name. It was far too powerful for a small frog to bear. So it was too big of a name. It was such a scary thing that they definitely did not want to hear its name. To hear it would have meant their deaths. The frogs leapt madly from their resting places. They stuffed their toes into their ears and hurled themselves towards the protecting water and hid there for a very long time. Could you imagine if someone put their toes in their ears just not to hear a scary name? That sounds pretty foolish. But what else were they supposed to do? On the riverbank, the spirit of the whirlwind rocked from side to side with laughter. It jumped and danced, kicked up the dust and cackling to itself. Then it wheeled away from the water, back towards the plains. When the frogs finally dared to poke their heads out, the whirlwind spirit had disappeared. So they paddled silently back to their first camp. The lady frogs were hesitant to welcome their ungrateful husbands and sons, but hearing the horrible story of the whirlwind spirit, they figured that the male frogs had learned their lesson. So it seemed like that scary tornado spirit taught them a good lesson. Ever since that time, male and female frogs have lived together. And they have all lived in fear of the whirlwind spirit, who they know is never far away. That is why streams and rivers, ponds and pools, lakes and billibogs will always be the frogs' hiding places, and will jump into the water at the slightest sound or smallest movement. For who can say when the spirit of the whirlwind might return? And that was the end of our story. Could you imagine how scary it would be to be a tiny frog, even though there would be a humongous tornado spirit chasing you? I'd be pretty scared too. Now I think it's time for us to move into our virtue. I hope you enjoyed the story and you learned a very important lesson, that if you don't help out with everyone and their chores, bad things can happen. So our virtue for today is helpfulness, and the story we read was about a whirlwind spirit. Let's read the quotation for today. Do not refuse a kindness to anyone who asks it, if it is in your power to perform it. So, whether you believe in God or not, this is from a holy book. And it says, you should not refuse to help someone. And if you're able to, then you should definitely help them out. Helpfulness is being of service to someone. When you're being helpful, you do useful things to make a difference. Helpfulness can be doing something that others cannot do for themselves. Things that they don't have time to do, or just little things that make life easier. There are times when you feel helpless. That is a good time to ask God for help and let others be helpful to you. There is plenty of help if you are willing to ask. So again, whether you believe in God or not, I feel like we can all be helpful and help everyone out, because when things get difficult, you would hope that someone would help you when you needed it. The practice of helpfulness. So if you're still struggling on how to practice helpfulness or how to be helpful, here are some things that someone that is helpful does or says. I notice when someone needs help. I do service without being asked. I give people what they need, not always what they want. I listen to someone who needs to talk. I ask for help when I need it. Helpfulness allows me to make a difference. So I'm hoping that you all are able to practice helpfulness, and for today or for the rest of your lives, just do something really nice for someone. If you have a little sibling, or if you have parents, or just your guardians, or even your friends, do something nice to help them out. That's Mam-Mary. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. I hope you enjoyed our story today, and I hope you have a bunch of fun even if you're at home. Keep on reading and be helpful. Goodbye.